Today, I'm very, very excited to be able to moderate this session with Mei Xu. I'm a C200 member since 2012, and I was an entrepreneur. And when we had an opportunity to talk a little bit before this session, I just had so much incredible respect for Mei Xu, and I'm just delighted to be able to interview her for you. So today we'll be hearing her incredible story, which has just recently been published in her new book called Burn: How Grit, Innovation, and a Dash of Luck ignited a multi-million-dollar success story. So I know you'll love hearing her journey and all about her business success in the next hour. We will have a few housekeeping rules for today. We just want to start with a few items. This is meant to be a really interactive session for all of us. So we'll open up the lines for question and answers at the end of the seminar with about 15 minutes to go. So please put your questions into the chat box. I know you'll have a number of them. In the meantime, please keep your lines muted until then, and feel free to submit any questions in the chat box. And we'll be reading those to Mei Xu a little bit later. The webinar will be recorded and it'll be sent to all attendees for the webinar at the conclusion. And it'll also be posted on the C200 website. So I know you'll want to share it with everybody at C200. Well, with that said, let's get things going with our speaker today. Mei came to the United States for over 3 decades ago, from 1991, when she arrived at the Dulles Airport from Hangzhou, China. And today her story is just one of stunning success. She built a multi-million-dollar company, Chesapeake Bay Candle Company, and met and counseled thousands of entrepreneurs and business people. And she even advised President Obama on the topic of job creation. Amazing. I think that will be a story that you must share with us. And she recently launched a new business called Yes, She May, an online shop for well-designed products in fashion, wellness, beauty, and home for women's own brands, trying to support women entrepreneurs. What an incredible thing to do. So without further ado, I will turn over our conversation and start by asking Mei, what brought you to America and what inspired you to start your own business?
That is a very sort of familiar story for immigrants. As one of them, I was actually brought up in China. In my book, I mentioned, I felt that I grew up in 2 different China. The China that was very closed in and extremely isolated in the 1960s and 1970s. But the 1974 trip by President Nixon really changed that. The country started to open after Chairman Mao died in 1976. And it quickly realized that it has been so isolated. Most of its career diplomats do not speak very good language to be able to perform their duties. So they decided that they want to set up 8 foreign language middle schools and high schools around the country so that students can learn more and in an emerging manner, not only foreign language, but also foreign culture. And the year they started doing this was in 1979. And I was 12 years old. As one of the first group of students, I was able to enroll in Hangzhou Foreign Language Middle School. And that because of that focus, it became very clear to me at that time that my life would be about diplomacy and foreign affairs and culture. So I was the fortunate small group that was able to expose to a very new culture. And graduating, 6 years later, I went on to Beijing Foreign Studies University to get finished with my education. During the time, I was very fortunate to work for the World Bank, helping them with translation and able to really be exposed to a very global work environment. And I find myself liking it. I was hoping to continue being the bridge between the international organizations and the local communities that have different needs sometimes than what the experts have subscribed to them. Then came Tiananmen Square. Most of us know what happened during that day in 1989, which is the year I graduated. what you probably did not realize is that after what happened in Tiananmen, all the foreign embassies and international organizations withdraw from Beijing for a brief period of time. And the student who usually graduate in July of each year was asked to leave the cities and be assigned into areas where they cannot gather. So work like in the factories or in the farms or with soldiers. And I too was not able to stay in Beijing. Rather, I was put to look after warehouses in northern China, where for a whole year, my job was to look after the minerals for export to other countries from China. And my job was to have a clipboard. Every morning there's a truckload, and I clip once when the truck came, and then usually there's another one in the afternoon, and that would be my entire year. My only boss would be the one who works in the same warehouse. It's very isolated, and he barely speaks Chinese to me, let alone English. So as some of you speak other languages know, if you don't practice or watch a movie or talk to a native speaker, after a year, you'll give up a lot of your capabilities. So I was very devastated. And that's when I decided, out of the circumstances, that I don't want to waste all my training of more than 10 years. And I have to give up my career in diplomacy. And that's when I decided to apply for graduate study. And that's when I landed in University of Maryland, right here in the Washington, D.C. area, because it's close to Washington, to the bank. World Bank is based here. So like many immigrants, the circumstances very complicated, but we all want to look for a better opportunity.
Sure. It must have been so hard for you to come like that. So did you go right to your studies then? And what did you study?
I was extremely fascinated with international organizations, particularly the gap between different cultures, different needs. And because as a language student, we know that when you're coming to the US, you really need to pick up a new major. You can't just say, I'm going to be a translator between US, China. So I ended up choosing journalism and mass communication, thinking that is where I can apply my knowledge of the world. And particularly, I was an American studies major. It would help me to continually apply what I learned, maybe in a new way. But I graduated again in 1992. And if you recall, that was our first war with Iraq. And US is one of the largest donors for the World Bank. When they had a war, they usually don't pay its dues for international organizations or delay it. So once again, I graduated into a bad year where the bank is not hiring. So that's when interesting things happen. I imagine this is what happened to graduate student last year. I couldn't find a job as an immigrant, particularly with my background in journalism and public affairs. A non-citizen is a challenge to find anything. So I found a job in New York. It was a boring job. That's probably a good thing looking back. I mentioned I think I wrote recently an op-ed about the bamboo ceiling for Asian American women. I took a job that paid me only $19,000. Many immigrants took those jobs because there's no options and there's really no place to negotiate. So I took that job, and rather than utilizing my network at international organizations, my background with a lot of agencies that between the WHO and UNDP, the company really just used my sort of secretarial skills. And I was always giving a lot of work at 4 o'clock so that I can stay longer and I have no place to complain. But what was the great thing at that time was that I was put in a hotel near the Bloomingdale's. And for a girl that grew up in China with nothing, being in the Bloomingdale's next to it, it's almost like I was a bird set free. And every day I remember going there, it's like forgetting the reality. This is my paradise, even though I couldn't, really afford anything. And I think it's also because of the training growing up, I was very observant culturally. And from the aesthetic perspective, I was always liking the fashion floor with a beautiful, simply just amazing fashion assortment, particularly the kind that I like. It's more clean, minimalist, Donna Karan and Calvin Klein. And then I went upstairs and everything became extremely dated and very grandma-ish. I just asked myself, I said, look at these girls, they're wearing black. Obviously, everyone always wears black in New York. And then they went up, you would see those grandma-ish, very dainty wallflower fabric with very ornate furnitures. It looks like it's from 18th century. And you just can't put those together. You were just wondering what's wrong with this picture. And my ex-husband, David, also came with me for my study. And we were actually separated at that time because he's working in DC and I was working in New York because that's the only job I could find. So during the week, we would be living in two cities and I'll be talking about this a lot. And that is the moment, like a lot of immigrants, a lot of other entrepreneurs too, when you're not happy with your job and you find this theme that continually sort of speak to you or scream at you. And one day he just said, since you're so unhappy with your job and you don't really seem to have an opportunity to grow, why don't we just both quit and we start a new business? So that's how we started
Oh, wow.
in the beginning.
And how did you select candles? And, and what did your family think of that?
I see Molly there. I want to say that I'm so happy to see you here. Molly used to be my human resources director, and I haven't seen her for a long time. So I would love to say that the candle was because we were looking at each other lovingly, and there was a candlelight, and that's how it started, but it wasn't. As you can imagine, I didn't grow up with candles, not the least of which also because, fragrance industry and candle really was rapidly rising in the early 1990s. When we decided to start a business, I don't know if you remember, I was trained to become a diplomat, which means a lot of my friends speak very well other languages, but most of them did not end up being working for the embassies. It's only a small amount that really can become the ambassadors or working for foreign, in the foreign embassies that Chinese have opened. And it's the beginning of rapid growth of the Chinese export. This is really when I feel US-China has a honeymoon period. China is rapidly growing its export industry, and they need very good speakers of individual languages. So a lot of those classmates or people that I know have been working for state-owned foreign trade companies. And that's how it all gets started. And then it become privatized. But I was reaching out to them and I said, guess what? I want to get into the home business. I don't want to get into fashion or anything more competitive. I think home is the next frontier because I see the gap. And can you send me samples of anything that relates to home? So I think we both quit in the beginning of 1994. And by the middle and the summer of the 1994, we got maybe 10 different categories of samples. We got fake trees, it's very nicely called silk flowers. And we have seat cushions, all kinds of decorative cushions. And candle was one of them. One of the things China started to export, but it's not the fragrance candles like Yankee Candle. It's actually very handmade and decorative. It's a ball shape. I don't know if any of you remember. It looks like a stainless glass when you burn them. And it has a little bit of a different pattern. And it looks very, I wouldn't think my life depends on it. But, nevertheless, I brought it with me. And we decided to go to a trade show. Even today, when I talk to the women business owners on my platform, Yes, She May, I tell them that when they have great ideas, it's always important to test it. Don't just listen to your friends and family. Sometimes the market gives you much more direct answer. And this is how I found out. We have 10 different categories. We were late for the trade shows in Atlanta, where you're based. It's in June, or in August in New York. These two major home and giftable shows really is when the big and smaller retailers replenish each season, one in January or February for after holiday and one in the summer for the holiday. And we were too late to get all the merchandise ready by September. So we find a trade show in North Carolina. It's a very small regional show. We were there. We have a 10 by 10 booth. You can imagine we don't know about decorating the booth. We just put everything on the paper in the front, and those who's bigger, like the bigger product, like the silk flowers, was in the back. And 6 days later, our fate is sealed. We know exactly what to focus on, and that's the candle. Because out of the 80% of orders we have, everyone has an order for candle.
Wow.
And that's how we reacted very quickly. That first year, for 5 months, we did more than $500,000 of wholesale business.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that's the beginning of what we see is the beginning of the pivot to candles. So that's
Wow.
how we found out it's from market.
That's amazing. And you become known for design, for really crafting the design. And people say you have an elegant like way of looking at design. And so maybe you share with us a little bit about your philosophy for design and how it affects both your product and your packaging.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. One of the theses of my book is really to challenge established brands, is some of the largest brands of consumer product. Are there any other ways to give more shareholder value? If we just look at pricing alone, a lot of times the decisions will be made to bring manufacturing outside and to try to cut the cost down as much as possible. And then the manufacturing goes from one country, pass it on to another, pass it on to another. Along the way, people are not getting better paid in those countries, and they're polluting more countries. What I find that in the last 3 decades, what has really emerged is the power of innovation and design. And in my little business, when I started, there was a lot of candles that you probably remember, colonial candle, Yankee candle. If you don't see the label, they really look very similar. They have this grandma's jar. They all have, almost everybody agreed, the vanilla is going to be an ivory color. The mulberry is going to be a mulberry or cranberry fragrance. And it's just what you see, what you get. There's nothing lifestyle about it. So when I see the opportunity in home, I really see the opportunity to really reflect the way women in particular want to be more modernized. Why live in a home that reflect your grandmother's taste when you could choose something that is more streamlined or the color of which is more bright? Mm-hmm. So that's where I focus in the fragrance and the candle business. Is I really borrowed heavily in the beginning fashion. What's the trending color, the Pantone color? People think the Pantone color has nothing to do with home, but it will, and it has, because there's all these things now consumers, right now they can be exposed easily, but in the 1990s, without the internet, sometimes it's hard to see how fashion trickles to home, but it is there, and consumers are very smart. I remember when we launched a collection, it's actually called Feng Shui, believe or not, about the 5 elements. And when we first launched it to Bed Bath & Beyond, they say, no Americans would understand it, Mei. You're making it so complicated, because we tell on the back of the packaging, there are 5 elements. If you're born in these different years, this is your element. And, we talk about if you're a stone, or I'm sorry, if you're a rock or a metal, who you are better with. Are you better with fire person, or are you better with, water person? And Bed Bath & Beyond said, it's really crazy, but we're going to give it a try. They like to test. And the sales was so amazing because people feel it's interactive. Then they can find what is their element, what is a wife's element, what their children's element. We even get calls when people say, my grandmother was born in 18 blah, blah, blah. Can you tell us what element it is? It's that interaction that Americans are the best consumers, because we are very open-minded. We're very curious. And if you give them something to interact with, it's a lot better than telling them what to do. So a lot of the design and a lot of the innovation comes from observing things that is missing in the market and giving people something that is more than the total sums of the parts. So to speak.
Sure. It was like you personalized it for them, right? You personalized it for their home and for the people in their lives and things like that. That's really great. I can imagine. I remember when that concept came up and people were like fascinated with, oh, is your house feng shui? And it was just,
That's right.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, how did you come up with the name Chesapeake Bay?
Oh, because we were living, so the first house, we didn't buy a house until much later, but when the business took off, we were still in an apartment. I remember in Silver Spring, for those of you who know DC. And then as we grow rapidly, our business was really rapidly growing. From the first year, we were doing 500,000. The next year we were 2.5, and then we were 5.4. So Inc. magazine ranked us twice, as the fastest growing private business in 2000. So when we started growing fast, we need a bigger warehouse, and we found it in a suburb very close to Annapolis. And I just want to communicate very natural, nature-inspired lifestyle. Chesapeake Bay has never been a big tourist destination, but I found it actually very understated, very has a lot of tradition, but it's quiet. And that sense of nature is very unique from my point of view, because if you've ever been to China, all the cities have a lot of parks. And the parks are very man-made. They have rock gardens and flower beds, but it's very man-made, and it is always busy with so many population, as you can imagine. A piece of land that is historical on water and yet very tranquil most of the time is very new to me, and I want to express that appreciation, and also to focus on botanical fragrances. So one of the differences that our fragrance has always been is a very strong focus on environmental influences. We have fragrances called Copper Moon, or, I once designed a fragrance called Temple. And people would say, what is the smell of temple? Well, it's many things. It's incense. It's a sense of, when incense, as you know, has a certain fragrance, some sandalwood, some earthiness. So to me, those being near the Annapolis area has given me such a grounding for the entire brand and its language and its expressions. So I'm very happy about that.
Oh yeah, I think that's wonderful. And like the communication of that through the scent along with the product itself. So tell us a little bit about fragrances.
Another seminar. We'll have to start another seminar. Fragrances is such an interesting but very utilized sort of sensory. I think during the COVID now, people actually speak a little bit more to that. A lot of times they say if you lost smell or taste, that means you probably have had COVID. And all of a sudden, the idea that we have lost something so basic come to be a diagnostic tool. As a matter of fact, senses are always very interesting in that the nerve ending connect your sense of smell is directly connected with the nerve ending for memory. That's why when we smell something, we don't just say, oh, it's so good, it's so bad. It's really like, oh, you know what? It reminds me of my boyfriend's, my first boyfriend's, his cologne. Oh, it reminds me of the cookie my grandmother was cooking. All these is not isolated. It's because of that strong memory and then from that memory, it evokes a lot of emotions.
Sure.
So when we work with fragrances, we tend to also use that aromatherapeutical link to how we can make people feel. As you know, it's proven very strongly that lavender is very relaxing to you, and oranges is cheerful in the sense that it wakes you up, it makes you focus. And then there's other fragrances that makes you feel relaxed. So we use all these fragrances, and they're just a great way to, particularly, I don't know if you can imagine, during the last year, fragrance candle sales is tripled. People use fragrance to calm themselves.
Mhm.
to feel they can imagine themselves going on a vacation, even though they can't go there, or to remind them of a better time.
Yeah.
So the power of fragrance, I hope that people will also come to appreciate it more.
Yeah. Oh, it makes me, just saying that makes me want to go turn on all the candles now and light them this evening. So maybe I'll do that. That will be fun. So, but you along the way did move your business to the United States and start manufacturing in the US.
Yes,
So tell us a little
yes.
bit about that decision and what you learned from that.
You know, I'm always happy to call myself the factory girl. I love factories. The first factory we built was in China because when I started with candles, it was not fragranced. It was a very decorative candle. Long story short, after the great success in September and November, when we went back to the trade shows, we had a failure because nobody wants to order those candles. And we quickly realized people use those candles as gifts and they put them for decorations during holiday. And after the holiday, they don't want to see it. So that's when I really had my second realization is that it's not just candle, it has to be fragrance candle. Unfortunately, China does not have a fragrance industry in the 1990s. So what I ended up doing is very unusual. We formulate fragrances here and we ship fragrance oils into China so that my sister set up a factory to produce because no factory wants to do something that's crazy to buy oil first, put them in the candles without knowing people will buy them. So that's how we basically bootstrapped our initial factory. And it was probably the best reason that we can innovate and we can do small batches and we can really work according to our customers' needs. You know, my customers at that time would include Bloomingdale, for example, and Nordstrom's and Bed Bath & Beyond. And then we created a wonderful collection for Target. That was a great story that I think Susan mentioned because one day we were sitting next to each other in one of our C200 events and she was amazed about that story. Long story short, when we continually grow, there are some anti-dumping issues for candle from China. Some of you may know that anti-dumping is a very severe problem, right? So when you're considered anti-dumping, the cost of the duty or the duty is usually not 20%. For this case, it's 150% for all candles from China.
Wow.
So once again, I found myself looking for manufacturing. And I went to Mexico, I went to Thailand, and they're all have all kind of challenges. Mexico, because I end up going into a wrong city. I went to Tijuana, and you can imagine how scared I was looking at all the iron gates and all the guns there.
Yeah.
And Thailand is just so hot. You know, candle is really a business where if it's 100 degrees all the time, your cost of electricity would be so high. So we want to find a relatively cooler weather. And that's when I discovered Vietnam in 2002. Vietnam just opened. It has a very good young population. And it has a few cities in the north that is more mild temperature. So that's where we moved, and it proved to be very strategic. We were the first U.S. Manufacturing facility opened, and a lot of other factories followed later. You know, when there's anti-dumping for furnitures or for toys. But we were there in 2008 during the financial crisis, and as you can imagine, at that time, people's demand for product were much lower. And what did retailers do during those years? They ask you for discounts so they can lower their retail, so they can trigger more desire to purchase. But our cost of doing is actually very high at that time. Vietnam is a much smaller country. China has started to really see labor cost increases. So when a big country like China has labor cost increases, all the adjacent countries will see much higher increases.
Wow.
On top of that, China was buying up all the raw materials from, you know, petroleums to glasses, which means just like now, the commodity price is very high, transportation cost is very high. So we couldn't even maintain, let alone give more discount. And then retailers also do not want to have a lot of inventory because of a liability. So they want you to put 3 months of inventory instead of 2 months. So all these end up being a big squeeze on every direction. I remember really, really confused about whether we can weather a big challenge like that. And that's when I thought about, why don't we just manufacture in the US? Unlike other industry like textile or furniture, even semiconductors that as we are seeing now, the candle industry has always never really left. We have the entire ecosystem. And when I thought about that, I said, why don't we do that? And instead of looking at different locations in Texas or other cities or state, we decided to be in Maryland.
Yeah.
We wanted to be close to the market so we can react faster. And I truly have gotten a little bit tired of fighting quality issues from Asia because of all the delays that I'm not there to see. So this was a very big, I would say, a very big focus of mine. And it was not considered a very smart move. So I'm very happy that in the end, it really helped us.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Um, yeah, it really helped us. So
Well, that's great. Well, now when you stop and think about it, as you kind of look back over all the journeys that you've been through, you created this amazing brand. You brought fragrances into it. You were doing manufacturing in China, and now bringing it to the U.S. So you were really poised here to really grow the business. So what happened with the business in the next few years? Because eventually you just did decide in 2017 to sell the business. So we want to make time
yes.
to hear that story.
Well, I wrote a lot in the book Burn, which, by the way, is right here. And I think Allison is going to send you a link to a small local Washington-based store. If you can buy it from them, I would rather you buy from them than other huge corporations. But it was a right decision. At that time, manufacturing companies started to see some return of those jobs, mostly because of the same reason. The response time to the consumer market, particularly during a downturn, is very critical. And then what kind of response, right? You can have inventory, but it could be the wrong inventory. So in 2012, I was actually invited by the White House to talk about job creations, and that's what you mentioned.
Yeah.
Because the President Obama and his administration used the word reshoring. He actually wants to encourage more business to move back. I remember it was such a small event with about 12 other CEOs. I remember I was seated at the table next to Mr. Obama, and then he's sitting next to Vice President Biden at that time.
Uh-huh.
And then it's Mark Fields from Ford. Ford has moved some of its electric cars manufacturing also from Mexico back for the same reason. They want to really understand the process and innovate there. So there was a moment where the country is embracing manufacturing, particularly because we all come to the conclusion that when you can watch the entire process, that's where you can see where innovation can come in and how we can do things not just cheaper, but more sustainably, and probably increase the value of the product so that it gives better return on the investment. So that was a very good moment. And I was the very happy manufacturer of that decision in the end, because the quality of the wax that we can buy in the US so much refined, so much better. It gave me access to a new alternative, which is called soil wax.
Mm-hmm.
And I work much closer with the fine fragrance houses who are based in the US anyway on innovation, so that the quality is so much better. The consistency of the candle when it burns, the fragrance quality, the hot throw and the cold throw, all these challenges we used to have was no longer as big of an obstacle. And then on top of that, my engineers and designers, they can see the manufacturing. They know exactly why they can design a label that takes 5 processes to apply, that they have to put maybe money where the texture of the labels versus the shape of the label. I'm just giving you a easy example. Now they understand, they educate themselves. So the brand really take off also because I focused on some of the more sort of critical lifestyle brands. And one of them, lifestyle collections, one of them is called Mind and Body. I applied the aromatherapy to connect how you want to feel with fragrances. And it was a huge hit. I think it's still one of the top sellers
Wow.
in Target. I think even on Amazon, you can find the Mind and Body collection under Chesapeake Bay, but it's very affordable. It's made in the USA with very good quality, but it's something that I've always believed in, is that you want the public in general to appreciate it. It cannot just be that only a few people can afford to buy it. So that's always been a very strong sort of design principle for me, because I grow up in a very, average class. My family, was always trying to get by. My mom is a principal of a school, but she's never making more money than her teachers. So to me, when I make product, I think about them. I think about my dad, who's an engineer, and I want to make sure that, they can afford product like this. So it was doing great. Our bottom line and top line both expanded rapidly. We become, obviously, we've always been a very big supplier to Target, but we have maintained the top position for almost 2 decades.
Wow.
And then in 2016, December, before I went on a holiday, I discovered that I had breast cancer.
Oh,
And it was also pretty aggressive, that I need surgery. And that was the moment when someone approached us to buy the business. And before we know it, I was also discovered that it already has extended to my lymph nodes, and I need 6 months of chemotherapy. I during the entire negotiation process, some of you who went through an exit negotiation with all the investment meetings, management meetings, know that they can be very stressful. And I was wearing a wig in the middle of July negotiating the sale of the company, because it was not concerned, it was not as life-threatening, but I'm not sure I could run the business the way I used to, which is 24/7, fly a lot.
for sure.
So, that's how in September 2017, I sold the business to New Brands, one of the
Wow.
consumer conglomerate.
Wow. Well, we're so glad you're well, huh? That you're
I think so. I think that if they didn't defeat you, right, it makes you stronger. Many of our C200 partners and members have gone through the same thing. I think it actually helped that I was actually negotiating the sale, because I have something to focus, right? I can't stay at home and then you feel this is sore. Oh, that pain must be related to this. You kind of just have to push it. And that is a tough year, but and then I stayed on for another year. In 2018, I promised to stay on when they bought the company, because they're so big, they don't understand our DNA or the design principles. So it took a little while to get them on board.
wonderful. Yeah. To be able to transfer all of that, that's really great. Well, tell us a little bit about what your newest venture is. We want to make sure we have time to hear about your newest venture. So
It's a random harvest again. I like shopping. I always call myself professional shoppers for many reasons. It started from the Bloomingdale days. I'm always inspired when I go, and I'm very, very interested in trends and who's new, who's doing what. And I noticed that, and it's true, when I had events and people asked me to talk, a lot of women business owners will come to me and say, how do you scale? You're so comfortable talking about manufacturing and logistics. We can never trust a foreign supplier. We just don't know even how to meet them. And I feel I have something very unusual in that I grow up in a very global environment where I was exposed to other countries. I was exposed to my teachers who are from different culture. They are native speakers. So I have this confidence and comfort level. And then, I was also pushed to do something I wasn't probably trained for, but the language capability gave me a really good start and a good foundation. So I was trying to connect them sometimes with a supplier in Italy. My husband is Italian, and then I can introduce them to Chinese designers or manufacturers. I was trying to help them. And I was meeting with a lot of them because I was also a chair of the Meridian Center 1 year for diplomacy. So they have brought in with the State Department a lot of developing country women who are doing all kinds of business and need help. So I've always been in front of a lot of women. And this is more and more something I see, not just developing countries, but in our own backyard. It's exactly the same. Access to capital, access to market, and access to a good logistics solution, right? So how can you compete with Amazon when they have everything and these women literally has nothing against them? So I was always trying to see how can I best work with them. And then just quickly came the pandemic, 2000. Remember, I stepped down in late 2018, almost the end of the year. I spent a whole year in 2019 just going to visit different countries because some of it is because of my work with Meridian. I went to South Korea. I also went to Italy. And then the pandemic came, and a lot of them really, they only supply small mom and pop retailers. And those stores are closed. So they got canceled orders. They don't have any businesses. They cut all their employees and they can barely support themselves. So that's when I had an idea. And the idea is, yes, she may. It's an idea of putting a website front for a consumer product that is not really my strength, so to speak. It's something that I have done as a supplier. But I do believe that that was something I can do, is to start an e-commerce website where instead of having the traditional model where there are a lot of products in the store and then the inventories will all run, you are selling blue when you had a lot of pink, or you're having pink when you have a lot of blue. I want to train those women business owners to ship from their home so they don't depend on anyone else. And that way, when they see the sales model, they can start to build their forecast. And rather than keep making finished goods, they can keep the raw material, like how I used to work with the Target of the world, so that your inventory is not tied up in finished goods that you cannot really sell, particularly if they're fashion and they're already cut into sizes. So that's the idea. It's a dropship model. It's not a marketplace, because I want to elevate women's business. I want to show to the world that women's business are very high level, that they're not only innovative, they also have great quality, that they can replace a lot of the brands that you and I are used to, simply if we give them a chance.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Yes, She May is the name of your online platform. So we ought to all go check it out. I'm excited about it. So you have fashion, you have wellness products.
We have beauty and we have home. So if you go on, we worked now with over 70 brands around 25 countries in 5 continents. So it's literally amazing to see how we have women in Turkey, women in Peru, in Morocco, and they are shipping directly to consumers. It's really amazing. Our Moroccan woman, she's a MBA graduate from Wharton Business School, and she organized those women to work from home to make those leather puffs that you can sit on. And it's big to ship to me, and then I ship to others. So she just shipped directly to them, and we negotiated a very good rate so that together we can consolidate the needs. And that's something I'm very hopeful, that the more women on our platform, the better rate we can negotiate for everything, between advertising, social ads, and influencers. We work with just like a regular business, which is probably the problem. We should not be like another business, because it's so needed. This kind of work is really so needed, but so far I think it's very difficult.
You're helping 75 brands get a face, right? Have a opportunity for access, which is absolutely unbelievable. That's wonderful that you're doing.
And they employ a lot of women. That's the thing. A lot of them are working with women who otherwise probably would have not had a chance to have income. One of the big sweater company we work with, I call them big because they did so well with us. It's called MIA, M-I-A, and it stands for Mothers in Action. And they are high on the Andes, and they use the alpaca material to make sweaters. And it's just amazing. They have their babies swindled in the back, and they're making sweaters. So, it makes you feel good that you can help them.
That's fantastic. Well, I know you've helped so many entrepreneurs be successful, and you shared with them some of your real favorite things that you really like to share with them. And you call them May-isms, MEI-isms, which I love. So maybe as we wrap up today, you might share some of the favorite May-isms with us, and then we'll take some questions from our audience here today, because I'd love to hear some of your favorite. I bet you have so many in your book, which we all have to read too. So we'll leave a few minutes for making sure everybody knows more about that.
Well, actually, I always say for women, particularly coming from a culture that is training us growing up to be more conflict avoiding, I always say as a woman, don't hesitate to throw your head in the ring. Always know that you deserve it. Otherwise, you would never win that award or you would never get that promotion if you don't throw your head in the ring. We always want to evaluate ourselves so that we see if we're perfect for that. But being perfect is never going to get you anywhere. It's having the courage to be rejected and to ask for why and to try again. I think that's a spirit that I feel I always encourage. The second thing is I actually want everyone to know that being an immigrant has been a plus for me. The lenses through which I looked at the world is very different.
Sure.
I look at the world and I see opportunities. You know, I see right now with all the disruption, there's so much that can be done better. You know, every single product can be made better. Why does toothpaste have to come from a tube like that? Why, you know, why shampoo has to have so much water? All we need is the dry powder. Why do we need to put all these glasses and plastics together in order to have shampoo? So I feel that lenses of challenging established sort of rules and can be put upside down, can be remade. And the last thing I want to say is that don't just think, do. Because an idea will never be a great idea if it doesn't get to be tested. So I tell myself every day, there's a lot of challenges and I'm always looking to see whoever sits here is happy to join me and help those women. We are facing big competition, you know, Amazon being one of them, but a lot of others are doing a great job. So how do we cut the noises and really make that connection between our women and their great invention and consumers who probably are looking for them? And I feel they're looking for each other. They just can't find each other because now you have Facebook, you have Google, you have all these noises in the middle that makes it really hard.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And, but you've gone through so many barriers and found new paths and new opportunities. It's wonderful for you to share with us today. I'd love to ask if anybody has any questions. Oops, we've got one. Hang on a second here. Good. This is from Ellie Stang, who says, thanks, May. This was great. I have to drop off, but I love this discussion and your great insights. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any little questions that you'd like to pose for the next few minutes? I've got one. So one of the things I wondered is, do you feel coming to the United States, do you feel like this is still a great land of opportunity? Do you still feel like that you can accomplish anything here? There's so many challenges these days and people are always questioning that. How do you feel about the US as a place for starting a business?
So actually, that's how I end my book.
Oh, okay.
These days, many people come to ask me, China has rapidly growing in the last 3 decades, and we already forecast the GDP of China would surpass US probably in 2035. And do you think US is going to be still the leader in the world? And I said, as long as my story, who was an immigrant without a lot of means, coming here in 30 years ago and finding herself giving advice about employment to the President of the United States, as long as stories like this still true, I do believe all of us have opportunity. Like I said, you just have to really look at things in a different lenses and really be not afraid. I know it's very difficult to say. I can't describe the sense of of determination that sometimes is separating the entrepreneurs from people that never have determined enough to do it. So that difference is sometimes what people regret in their life. So I want to say, right now there are lots of opportunity.
Yeah.
Online learning, education has completely been changed. Restaurants is going to be a whole new world. Retail is upside down. So all of these things, yes, they are all, it's just like after Second World War in Europe, there's so much disruption. And it's very easy to be completely overwhelmed by the disruption. But if we just take a moment to calm ourselves down, it's where opportunities are. And we just have to see it.
Yeah. Well, it's wonderful for you to share with us today about, your journey. And one of the things I loved was reading some of the reviews about your book. One of the things I thought was so wonderful is they said, the way it was phrased, and I'm gonna get it right here. Excuse me for a second, because it was a wonderful way in which someone said that you are timeless and your ideas are on trend and so timely. And I love that, because everything that you said with us today really is timeless. And your ideas are so relevant today for people considering, an entrepreneurial venture, for you to share with them and mentor with them. And C200 is so inspired by our entrepreneur stories, half of our members being entrepreneurs. So, you're a great inspiration, and I think it's fantastic. I know as you start this new journey, you've got your book and you've got your new platform of 75 women's brands, which I'm just dying to jump into. So we can all do that at C200.
We have a lot of Mother's Day gifts waiting for you. And I'm so happy. This is the first time I will share with everyone that despite of what I would be considered a challenge because of how I left China, I think it's going to be published in Chinese next year. I just got.
Oh, how fantastic is that? That's really great that you've been able to.
That would be making me so happy that my family can read it, because in English it's a little bit challenge to read for them. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you have children, right?
I have 4. I have, that's why, being a mother is another story that maybe we'll tell in a separate but like every other C200 member, life is full in many different ways.
Well, I'm sure you're very proud of them and very proud of the company that you built, which was an amazing success and still is. So good for you. And we look forward to your next success and can't wait to be a part of that at C200.
Yes, I can't wait to see more new, members joining. I already hope that more and more young women will would become the entrepreneurs that we want to see. And I can't wait the in-person event, Allison. I wonder if it's going to happen this year or next year, but I'm there.
Good. And then we can maybe do a platform on Yes, She May brands, that would be really great. So we do have a few more wonderful things that people would like to share with you. Absolutely wonderful conversation. That's from Karen Van Bergen. And want you to know that. And then Kim Sharon said, what a wonderful story. Thank you so much. And for C200 for putting together this really great session.
Well, really, thank you, and Allison, and for C200. It gives me such a great platform to meet like-minded women. And no matter where you are in your career, you know that there's always dark clouds and the sun always come back. That's what I try to tell myself now.
Will you breathe a lot of energy into all of us today with your inspiration? Now we can be excited about the candles in our lives, and we can burn them in honor of you. And thank you so much again.
If you know of any women entrepreneurs in the beauty, fashion, and wellness arena, they know where to find us.
Yes,
we have to host them. So stay
wonderful.
In touch, everyone. And I thank you for joining me. And Susan, thank you. Allison, thank you for your organization. I know there's a lot of technical things we need to. I can't believe we can host so many people with us to be able to see each other.
Yeah, it's really great. Well, a couple more things. Thank you as a member of C200 Champion Program. So our minority champion entrepreneurs, I'm even more inspired to scale my business, she said. Her name is Robin Younger, who I happened to meet through one of the counseling sessions. So congratulations, she says to you. And thanks for sharing your story from Shannon Ousley as well. So Allison has posted, everybody, the link which Mei has provided to an independent store. We all love to be able to support those independent stores who struggle for our loyalty and faithfulness. I hope you'll all share this story with others that you know. We're so fortunate to have you with us today, Mei. So thank you again.
And we'll be seeing each other, I'm sure, in other C200 related events. And what a great organization, you know, for women leaders who sometimes can feel really lonely on the top, right? People don't understand. You have to make a lot of tough decisions and difficult calls, I'm sure, in the last year. So thank you for giving us the space.
Thank you for sharing your story again. That's what inspires all of us. So we're very grateful.
I'm inspired by a lot of other women too. I remember every events, we always hear from each other and lots of great advice from them as well. Yeah. So thank you again, everyone. Good to see you, Molly.
Everyone have a wonderful day. Yeah.
Bye. Bye-bye, everyone.
Enjoy